Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to another episode of our WCNFluencer podcast. And today is actually, they're all special, but this one's even more special because we're introducing a new podcaster to the Whole Care Network, Carrie Severson. Carrie, welcome to the Whole Care Network.
Thank you. I'm excited to join you guys.
We're thrilled to have you involved, and we know that you have a story to share and a message for folks that are in a caregiving role with their spouse. But I got to start out with some levity because, I don't mind washing dishes.
Yeah. I saved you do the dishes came out of the frustration and the unbalanced equilibrium that took place in our household when my husband had cancer. And as you get to know my story, you'll learn that he was a head and neck cancer patient. It was a pretty horrific ordeal. And he had to have an emergency feeding tube, be sedated before radiation. I fed him around the clock every 3 to 4 hours. He was on 5 different oral drugs and then fentanyl patch. And when, we started to find balance again, I had a lot of trauma start up in my body, as a lot of caregivers probably experience. And during a heated argument, it was like, you know what, dude, I've done my part here. You're still alive because I drove you to and from the hospital. It's your turn to do the dishes. It's sort of stuck. And whenever I shared it with other caregivers in my network, they were all like, we understand, we get it. So I started playing with it.
And in really just about any caregiving situation, you have to find some humor.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, absolutely.
And that when we first met and I saw the name of your podcast, I thought, okay, there's a story here, but you inject that your title injects a sense of humor to a very critical and serious situation that really kind of helps us get through these unplanned events that seem to happen for caregivers.
Yeah. And there's this, my tone in the, I wrote a book first and still pitching Asians. The tone of our story is very different than I think what is out there. And when I looked for support and solace for caregivers, I actually say this a lot. I joined caregiving support groups and I felt like I had to be a gladiator with like a shield and, armor and the headgear, because you were walking into the temple of doom. It was very doom and gloom. It was very, it was really heavy, to the point where I would come out of a group and I'd share something that I learned with my husband. And he was like, you can't tell me stories like this. Like everything in the caregiving support groups were, how do I support my person that's losing his teeth, or, all of these really heavy stories. I wanted to focus on what I needed for my mental health, for me, and how do you find pockets of joy, pockets of light, and it was a very different way of thinking, very different way of living. So,
because I've always said, and I look at this as a privilege to be able to talk to folks like yourself who have been through the journey and experience it in their own way. But I've also learned along the path, and I'd be interested to get your feedback on this, is that when it comes to caregivers and caregiving, there are no strangers.
Right. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I know people will reach out to me that I haven't talked to in years. One just happened. I had to pause and think back. And we were talking like a decade. And she's like, we used to hang out at this bar. I have to tell you, I stumbled upon your podcast. I've been caring for my husband for 5 years. And I was like, I know the name. How do I know the name? And instantly, instantly connected again. Oh my gosh, I totally understand what you're going through. What do you need? How can I help? I have people calling me, asking me questions about, my husband and I, we had a really hard time even getting the diagnosis. He had to wait 3 weeks for a biopsy. He found out he had the biopsy results were malignant by voicemail, and he was just given a number to call to try to get an appointment. And he was like, I have to be the captain of my own ship. I have to. So I have a lot of tips and stuff like that. And I'll have people call me, email me I haven't spoken to in years, and they're like, this is what's happening. What did you say about how do you get this going faster? And what did you say about that? And so I appreciate the opportunity to share what I learned, not only as a caregiver, but as a medical advocate. And I think those are two different,
Very critical, right?
yeah, two different roles. And then what I learned as his spouse and soulmate, it's all wild. I mean, it's just God uses me, and this is a repetitive pattern in my life. God uses me in such harsh lessons that I internalize and figure out. And then because I'm a natural storyteller, this is a talent of mine, I figure out a way to put it through a specific lens and share my lessons with the masses. I've done this, a couple of different times. And I think caregiving is on the minds of so many. We've talked about this before, that the numbers that come out about the actual numbers of caregivers is probably really inaccurate.
It's low. I think it could be twice as much as what AARP reports, and there's caregiving's in every neighborhood, it's in every boardroom. I mean, there's no boundaries when it comes to caregiving.
And what you learn as a caregiver.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know how you balance the emotional component of caring for a spouse versus I don't know why this word is coming to my mind, the pragmatism of dealing with the healthcare system. Because you mentioned something that really didn't surprise me in one sense, that you got a voice message about the diagnosis.
Right.
It's like it's always amazing to me, and I don't mean this in a critical way to the medical profession, but some of the insensitivity that happens in and around the way things are communicated to caregivers.
I know. Again, I keep using the word wild because I had no idea what this was like until I became one. And, I'm embarrassed about that. And, you don't know what you don't know until you have to learn it. But for an example, me as his wife, he forwards me the message. I'm in a parking lot by myself, about to go get our weekly groceries. And we're on high alert because we've waited now 28 days for biopsy results. I hear my phone chirp. I check it out. I hit play, and it's a 2-minute run-on sentence from this doctor letting him know the biopsy is malignant. And I'm like, it like hangs in front of me like fog. I'm like, what did that guy just say? Okay, so he has cancer. All right. Okay. I'm like numb. For the next day and a half, it's totally wiped from my memory. I don't remember it. But the next thing I remember is a few days later, I'm back in a parking lot. I was doing like errands just to keep occupied, try to keep my mind from actually being still and breaking. And I'm like, you know what? The only thing I can think to do is call that guy and give him a piece of my mind. And so I looked up this doctor's phone number, and I was like, hey, you don't know me. I'm the wife of your patient you've seen for the last decade. And I just got to tell you that I think it was really crappy that you left a voicemail for your client who you've been treating for 10 years that he has cancer, and we haven't heard from you. I think you can do better. We don't even understand the name of the cancer cell you said because you said it so fast without any explanation. We have no idea what's happening. And I let him have it. That was me as a spouse. Me as his caregiver. When he calls me a couple of days later, I'm in a writer's meeting And my husband calls me and he's like, I got to be the captain of my own ship. Let's go to the ER. I want to go get a picture of this thing. And I'm like, 100% I'm behind you. Whatever you need, wherever you want me to go, I'll be there. And I dropped what I had. I canceled my meetings, showed up in the ER with them, and, supported him. We had to pay cash, walked into an ER. He walks up to the admin office and he's like, hey, I have a little bit of cancer and I'd like someone to take a picture of it. That's legitimately what he said. And I'm crawling out of my skin because a little bit of cancer is too much cancer. And, it wasn't an emergency. We didn't have a referral. So they made us pay cash. And if we didn't agree, they were like, you should go to this ENT and all these other things. So he gets a picture, he gets a CT scan. The results come back a few hours later, and the attending physician literally just points to a piece of paper, the results, to let him know he had head and neck cancer. And it's in his lymph nodes and on his tonsil. And he couldn't hear it. He couldn't understand. He couldn't accept it. He's like, so you're telling me I have throat cancer? And the doctor shakes her head and she hands me the piece of paper. And I'm holding his hand and I'm like, honey, it says you have metastasized cancer. It's in your lymph nodes, it's on your tonsil. So I felt in that moment, there was this, I remember it clear as day, there was this like separation that was happening for me, where holding his hand was me as his wife, telling him what he was, diagnosed with, reiterating it in a way that he could understand what's his caregiver. And I felt like that was happening throughout this entire experience. There were moments where I was his wife, moments I was his advocate, and moments I was the caregiver. And I'm sure everyone.
And it's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
And a roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah. And it's still like, I talk to friends, cancer, people in my life who've had cancer on the opposite side of this. And they're like, there's still trauma. He still can't remember a lot of this. And we're on these two different healing paths, experiencing something very different from the same turning point. I remember it clear as day. I wish I could forget some of this, but it definitely made me, it changed me for life, like it changed him for life,
Right, and actually, and I mean this in sincerity. You're using your experience, all the good, all the bad, to help somebody that's going to come after you, because there are people out there that are searching for that same comfort and understanding that you're providing. And I think that's why so many caregivers connect to stories, because they can relate 100% to what the caregiver is going through.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I'm grateful for the opportunity to know how to turn this into a story. My husband and I were talking about this yesterday. I'm a public speaker, and before he was diagnosed with cancer, I was traveling the country leading burnout recovery seminars and doing keynotes. I was working in the healthcare industry a lot for private healthcare companies, and I did a lot with corporate America. Incorporating my lessons as a caregiver, I'm ready to share that, because I think learning how to be so adaptable, learning how to be so present, are tools that you can apply all over the place. And my husband was saying that yesterday. He was like, being able to turn this into a story and provide key lessons and objectives for someone else to learn, regardless of their own life experiences, is a gift. So I'm happy to have it.
My shiny bald head just came up with an idea that I want to share with you.
Oh, okay.
Why don't we record a podcast with you and your husband?
Yeah, I've actually been leaning into that and thinking about that. I'll run it by him. I think he would appreciate it.
Yeah, I would love. I'd love to meet him for one thing, but I think having having both the caregiver and the care receiver on a podcast together is quite powerful, and I'm kind of sharing that from personal experience too.
Yeah.
What that experience with Richard, and when Richard and I were interviewed by Denise Brown. This is going back, goodness. My hair was in different spaces and different colors. And then, so that's been 12, 13 years ago, but I still listen to that from time to time and hear, because you hear what the care recipient is saying, even though they are the spouse. It's just, I would love to be able to do that with the two of you. So
Thank you. I'll talk to him about it.
yeah, yeah. So tell our listeners and our viewers, because we're trying to go big time on the network with video podcasts, about your podcast. So I also want to talk about your books and your speaking gigs as well. But let's talk about the podcast and how cathartic it is for you.
Well, I Saved You Now Do the Dishes is specifically around caregiving recovery, nervous system recovery, providing tips and tools for the caregiver to be able to implement in their life, regardless of what they're doing. It does shine a light on the difference between being a spouse and being a caregiver. So I do provide some marriage advice just through my own lens and what I've learned. I break it down into bite-sized pieces. So the longest episode is probably 25 minutes. I share a lot about who Gavin and I were, his diagnosis, and then the first season is really taking everyone through his treatment. Season 2 will be on my healing and going from there. It's a weekly episode or a weekly podcast, and available everywhere.
It's available everywhere, and it's available on the Whole Care Network and your new landing page on the Whole Care Network as well. We're just kind of getting started here. I think you're into your 12th episode, I think, and you're publishing right now once a week, on Wednesdays.
Yes, on Wednesdays.
See, and I'm kind of organized. I kind of. But you're also a prolific writer and speaker. Let our listeners and viewers know about your books, and you touched a little bit about your speaking, but I'd like to get a little bit more in depth into that as well.
Okay. Well, I've been a professional writer for 30 years. I started in journalism in college. And I wrote a book called Unapologetically Enough about my own personal burnout journey that I experienced when I became an entrepreneur. And I kept the book close to me. I didn't publish it for about 8 years. I had the book and then rewrote it like many authors do. And when it came out in 2022, because it was on burnout, it hit a chord, specifically with corporate America.
Yes.
Women gave it to their bosses, and then it ended up in HR departments. And I started getting asked to come in to do burnout recovery seminars, virtual training to support employees coming back into the office burnt out. I didn't really think to turn my book into a seminar, but opportunities presented itself, and that's what I did. So I followed up Unapologetically Enough with a burnout recovery workbook called the Enoughness Method. Simple, fun book. It's got coloring in it. It's got journals, journal prompts in it. 10 tools that you can use anywhere to reset your nervous system. And that's really what I've been doing from a public speaking perspective and a training perspective until my husband was diagnosed with cancer. And now I do really want to reach the caregivers and the family caregivers and support that industry.
Your message is so needed about the trials and tribulations of caring for a loved one and a spouse, and then dealing with all the sidebars that happen in life. And I just I just think the title of your podcast is like off the charts.
I mean, the stuff still, bills still have to be paid, laundry still has to get done, dishes still have to be done, and after your 9 to 5. And for me, I don't know how people had a 9 to 5 while caring for somebody like that. And so many people do. There were days where we were at the hospital for 10 hours. He had 12 appointments on a weekly basis. There's no way I could come home and then do, a corporate gig. It's crazy.
Right.
That
And most employers, up until I think COVID, most employers just didn't understand
right.
what it took for a caregiver to balance both work and their caregiving duties. It's changed somewhat since COVID. I think there's much more awareness.
Probably, for sure, yeah.
But it's not anywhere near where it needs to be. And folks like you are making decision makers aware of the special need. I'm just so thrilled thrilled to have you a part of the network and learning about your story, and it's going to just continue to grow. But Carrie, let all of our listeners and viewers how they can be in touch with you, how they can find your podcast.
Sure. I Saved You Now Do the Dishes, available everywhere. It is on YouTube as well. My Instagram handle is author Carrie Severson. Find me there, connect with me, send me a message, we'll chat.
Yeah, and we'll have all of Carrie's contact information in the show notes here. And you can find Carrie on her WCN Whole Care Network landing page with all the links to her books, podcast, and you can even email Carrie through her landing page on the network. So Carrie, welcome to the Whole Care Network. It's so great to visit with you today, and full speed ahead.
Thank you.